It has been increasingly happening in the development of the space program. At this stage, we have quite efficient ways of reaching orbit, and therefore we are getting more and more areas in which the solutions of the problems on the ground are efficiently brought by space assets. We already have nobody would be able to even go 3 blocks out efficiently if it were not by the satellites that tell them where they are, which is all the navigation, GPS, well, Galileo.
Let's make a test. How many of you used Google Maps or Waze or any kind of navigation map to get to La Nave today? Raise your hand. You're not aware that if the GPS network goes down, you couldn't come here, right? That's how entrenched this kind of technologies are.
And there are many other things. For example, now the provision of communication satellites make satellites the best solution for connectivity in the rural areas in order to give internet and telephone to people that have never had access to that. And that's especially important for countries that have a very big surface of rural areas and people, and especially children who haven't had access to the modern way of learning. Yeah. So all of that is satellites. And satellites are, only in our company, we provide mobile phone cells fed by satellite in more than 3,000 places in South America. Many other things, we have all the necessary inventories of the ground and the cultivation systems and everything that are done by Earth observation. But you mentioned the military, that's even more dependent on that. Yeah. When we had this moment that probably everybody remembers, 3 or 4 moments in all this Ukrainian crisis. Yeah. One of them was, of course, when the communication system that is owned by SpaceX was shut off in certain areas and open in others. There have been 2 or 3 of those moments, yeah, definitive moments that have told us, wow, we can't go in any conflict without this. And even more important, the other moment when the government of the United States, well, incarnated in a specific person, removed for, I think, a week access to intelligence to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was bad. I remember that.
That was access to satellites.
Exactly.
And that was huge.
Yeah. I was recently, because I have friends that are working in innovation in the front in Ukraine, and one of the things they, especially the drone operators, they said, like, you know, for us, when Starlink was shut off for that week, it was horrible. Like, the fact that we now have access and the Russians don't is a major tactical advantage right now in the field. But you point out, I'll point even more, when we were talking with Amparo about the dependency of technology from the US, but very few people, when you say that, most people think about, you know, weapon systems, you think about, you know, aircrafts, but very few people understand that, as you pointed out right now, intelligence and targeting systems for weapon systems go in space. It's all of that is the space segment there.
Well, certainly the communications are essential. You don't want to send a weapon that is going to travel for 1,000 kilometers without having some sort of communication, at least to know that it's not coming back.
That's a good point.
At you. So without communication, there's a whole range of possibilities of the military that cannot happen. But not only that, in a defensive way, you need, only from space, you can be sure that you will detect the launch of missiles. Because currently, maybe somebody invents something different, they make a big fire, and you can see them. Yeah. And that's essential in order to know what's coming at you.
On the defense side.
And only from space you can do so many things. I mean, we have, since the time of the art of war, of Shenzhou. Everybody, I don't know, Alexander the Great, everybody has taken the high ground in order to win battles.
Exactly.
And which ground is higher?
This is strategy 101. You know, take the high ground. You can see everything from there and control it. Yeah, it's very interesting because we were talking about the space 1.0, and now we're talking about space 2.0. There's been a revolution. You know, you remember when we launched satellites before, they were bulky, expensive stuff. Now, as you mentioned a moment ago, we can launch things very easily, very quickly, very inexpensively. But Europe has always been leaders in aerospace. But now we're left behind. What happened?
Well, we are still leaders in aerospace in many areas, and in space also in many areas, or at least co-leaders. But certainly one thing that we haven't been able to achieve is the ecosystem in which the government would foster the development of more and more efficient systems for launchers. That is true. We have fostered a different thing, and therefore, well, the results are different. And in this case, really, it has been shown that the decisions taken by the United States Congress in 2004 and 2005, Charles Borden, Larry Garver, all these people who put their soul into, okay, now we are going to foster, instead of buying stuff from the companies, we are going to give the companies R&D money, and then we are going to buy services from the companies, because we think that these services might become a market in which the United States will profit and have exports. And those people were right. And it took a lot. I know, I've talked to the people, many trips to Congress and lobbying and talking to the Congress people, but they did it right. We attempted in 2012 in Naples, in Europe, to put a system like that for the development of launchers, but we did not, the forces in favor of that, we did not succeed.
I remember some interviews around 2011, 12, 13 about this, and it was like, do you think now we have like the visionary people to push this through? Actually, connected to that, we are building a project to rival with Starlink, which is IRIS-2. So explain a little bit of what IRIS-2 is. What's your involvement in that project? And do you feel we now have the people that can lobby here locally in Europe to push these things?
Yes, IRIS-2 is, in principle, at the moment, a communication system based on low Earth and medium Earth orbiting satellites that has been developed by the European Commission with partly public money and partly private money. This is mostly forced by the law. So you cannot enter with public money into a structured area where there is business and there is commerce and eat it up.
Yeah.
We did it with Copernicus, and it was really wrong. We should never have done that. But in this case, what we're doing is a public-private partnership. The three big satellite operators of Europe, SES, Eutelsat, and Hispasat, are teaming up with the Commission, in which the satellite operators are leading the technical development, which is really a way to by means of this, the rules of commerce, we are forced to make it efficient. Because we are investing money and we have to explain it to the board. So therefore, we are doing it in a way that is different, it is true. It is better. It is probably a model for many other things. But we are still not there. We are still not there in a public-private partnership as a definition, as the definition of it is, which is the private entity should be the owner of the asset and the operator of the asset. That this is the model that they installed in the United States, especially for launches and several other things.
Yeah, actually connected to that, I remember we were talking that SpaceX managed to do what they did because they had a commitment by the government that they would buy, their output eventually. They nearly died. They were very well, I wouldn't say very lucky. They did a very good job, but they were like months away from bankruptcy until they managed to lock in the first contract with NASA. And that has been kind of ongoing for many other projects. So they, as you pointed out, they showed that the model works and how it can accelerate this whole thing.
But it needs a lot of investments from the public.
Exactly. That's what I was going to ask you. Do you see that still happening here in Europe, or what's still missing in that equation?
If we want
here?
to go to that volume, then we need to increase. I mean, people think that it has been very well, let's say, propelled the idea that SpaceX is a different thing and is a private thing that has been superseding public money, and it's completely the opposite. They have received at least 3 times or 4 times more public money than private money gotten from the markets. But Europe doesn't have now 50 billion American of public money to put into an enterprise like that. So we need to think. We can change the model, but we need to have the volume.
That's a very good point. I was talking with Adrian from Creo Space a moment ago, and we were talking. He just raised a 50 million round to build a factory of satellites. And I was saying, hey, congratulations. And he said, like, yeah, it's not enough. And like, what? And like, yeah, when I started this, I thought that 5 million was going to be enough. And now, no matter how much money I raised, I always need more. Space requires a lot of cash. It's very
Of course, there's a big
intensive.
difference between 5 and 50,000 billion.
billion.
Therefore, we don't need to stretch that far. For all the startups that want to work in any deep tech, the typical American, let's say, investment check is 50 to 100 million. And then you get 2 or 3 of them, and then you construct.
It's a seed round for
and then
for
you
them
construct a 300 to 500 million enterprise that can live for the 5, 7, 8 time. But we do not have that kind of private money here. This is extremely important for all startups, that we put together some sort of incentive so that we don't have all European private capital going to the US and investing in American US, because that's what's happening.
Yeah.
In American startups.
Yeah.
People here have their, let's just say, the family office and everything. They invest in the American market because it's profitable.
Yeah.
But if you don't start investing in the European startup ecosystem, then it will never be profitable. So somebody has to
make the
move that needle.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you, speaking of startups, you know, you're in a very interesting position because you've had all the experiences, you know, from government, from, you know, institutions and space institutions, now private companies. So what would you tell European startups that either are doing space tech or want to get involved in space tech? What would you tell them to get involved more? Because it's sounding really obvious here. It's like it's hard, it's expensive, you know. How do we get more companies involved also?
Well, it is hard, but being hard makes it more interesting and makes it more passionate. So it is good that it's hard. If it would be so easy, then everyone would do it.
Yeah, we don't want an app for that. Yeah.
So therefore, the only, let's say, barrier that I see is not talent, is not the universities and whatever the technicians that you can have, is the access to capital. So the only thing is, in the meantime, we have to keep pushing for public money to complement private money. So go to all possible offerings of that sort, and keep spreading the word. If you, owner of private capital, sometimes it's these few people, keep taking your capital to the United States or in former times to the UK, then your own country will suffer.
It's a responsibility.
And you will
aspect.
suffer.
Yeah.
So it's a responsibility aspect. And then, of course, For these people, you have to add the rest of the argument, that is, and then if you invest in Europe, you will make more money than in the United States, and I think it's true. I told them when I was minister, I want you to be very rich, but invest in startups in Europe.
Well, we're out of time. That went actually as a breeze. I could keep talking with you, but that was fantastic. I think that's a very good message to keep. Like, we need to be responsible with our investments and where we invest to build up our own future. And with that, well, please, Pedro, thank you very much. Big applause to Pedro Duque.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.